Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the 2023 summer information session for the summer sampling season for the Indigenous community-based monitoring program. So just a couple housekeeping items. If at any point you get disconnected, just use the link again to hop back in, or you can send an email. We do have Brad with us today. You'll be moderating the chat. So at any point, if you have a question, please feel free to use the chat or just unmute and you can ask me directly, no problem. So I'd like to begin with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the lands that we are working on are a part of Treaty 6 and Treaty 8 territory, which are the traditional and ancestral lands that have been cared for by the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux First Nations of both past and present. We acknowledge that this land is home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta in regions 1, 2, 4, and 5. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today, and to those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement in respect and reconciliation to those territories we reside on and are visiting. So just a quick look at the agenda today. We're just going to go over OLM's role in ICBM, take a look at what the summer program design will look like, go over the summer field sheets, just a kind of review for calibration procedure. We do have some new members joining us this summer, so it might be a review for some, it might be new information to others, and then also go through the program protocol before and during and after sampling, going over shipping logistics again, and then just some next steps. So for those who don't know us, we are the Alberta Lake Management Society. We are a charitable organization formed in 1991, and we became the first Canadian chapter of the North American Lake Management Society, or NALMS, in 1992. So we receive funding from a variety of stakeholders to conduct water quality sampling across Alberta. Last year, we received funding and a contract with the Oil Sands Monitoring Program to deliver a water quality program for Indigenous communities in the oil sands regions. We've just recently been approved for the 2023-2024 work plan, which we're all very excited for, and the reason that we can have this webinar today and proceed with summer sampling. So our role is to provide water quality sampling equipment, such as the probes and bottle sets, along with online and in-person training for the sampling protocol. We also process all the samples collected and ensure that they are sent to the appropriate analytical labs. We also manage the data, and we'll be compiling an end of season report, which will be ready later this year for this past winter season. And finally, we do community visits where we've had the opportunity to work more closely with each community and provide any support needed. Okay, so the summer program, it's pretty similar to winter, but there are some big differences. So we'll be going through those today. So once again, you will be receiving the YSI Pro Solos, which measure temperature, DO, and connectivity. Each kit will be provided. We'll have an instruction manual, the field sheets, the bottle sets, calibration solution, the chlorophyll A filtering kit again. A new addition for the summer is our Secchi disc, which I will go through in more detail later on, but you can just see that in the top right corner there. For this summer, within our contract, we've decided that communities are able to choose 2 lakes to sample. So if you haven't already been thinking about which 2 lakes, please discuss with your community which 2 lakes you'd like to prioritize. And then just let me know once you do. Once again, we're going to be sampling once a month. this time from June to September. I will be bringing out those specialty bottles again for the hydrocarbons, the mercury, and the metals. And we're also going to be doing a quality control event per community. So I'm going to be bringing even more bottles out. And this is just to do some field blanks and duplicates that will assess the quality control for the labs. And then in terms of reporting, yeah, we're going to be working on the ALMS report from the winter season. So we're going to have that available as soon as we can. And the raw data is, as we collected, will be uploaded into the KISTER's data portal, which I will provide a link for on our website. Just make sure no one's in the chat here. Okay. So the sampling equipment list looks pretty similar from winter, with the addition of the Secchi disc, and there's going to be more ice packs being shipped out as well. Just with summer, obviously the heat, it's very important that we keep our samples cold. So lots of ice packs, and there won't be those thick green gloves being sent out because that's just for the winter sampling to keep hands from being frozen. The same bottles. The same 7 bottles. And then the same chlorophyll filtering supplies. The only thing that will change, instead of that flask and the stopper being sent out, it's just going to be one filter apparatus now, and it's 500 milliliters. So that'll be nice. While you're filtering chlorophyll, you won't have to empty it as much. So just taking a look at the field sheets, there is some significant differences in the environmental observations. So I'll just go through that. So the sampling information looks the same. You're going to write your lake name, location name. For those who don't know, location name is just kind of a reference point on the lake if it's near a campground or boat launch or a building that is kind of easy to identify on the lake, and that we can just refer to in future sampling trips. The date, the time you start sampling, and then hours spent sampling. So that will include the calibration process, the transportation, like getting to your lake, going out onto the site, doing the sampling, and then filtering after. So for the environmental observations, we have air temperature, wind speed, and wind direction. So those are new. These can all be found on any weather app. So you can bring that out when you bring your phone out, you can refer to that on the boat. Percent cloud cover. So it's kind of just a general percentage. So when you look across the whole of the lake, like how much cloud coverage is there? If it's a clear blue sky kind of day, just write 0. If it's partly cloudy, maybe it's like 20 to 80%. And then obviously full clouds, you can just write 100. So this just kind of gives an idea of what the day and the weather is kind of looking like when you're sampling. And then below that, it says 24-hour rainfall. So if maybe a rainstorm just passed through the day before, or maybe it rained in the morning, you can check on any weather app and it should let you know that information. And then you can just put the amount on the field sheet. This just helps us to understand how rain might affect water clarity. And then a pretty important one for the summer, as many, I'm sure of you have noticed when you're out on the lakes in the summer, is there's cyanobacteria blooms on quite a few of our lakes. So we want to make a note of that, of like what the blooms kind of look like. I provided a few pictures here just to help distinguish what the blooms may come out as. So oftentimes we see green particles in the water. When we look directly down from the bow, there's no distinct clumps. So that's kind of what that first picture is. Sometimes the blooms can appear like paint streaks, like that second picture, and other times as scum that like floats on the surface. So just that last picture there. Some blooms can appear brown or red in color, but often will be more blue to green. They could also appear like foamy or in mats. So just please describe what you see as best as possible. And then the section below that is regarding the Secchi depth, which I'm going to go into more detail later on about how to measure that with the disc. And then of course we still have our GPS coordinates box, which is very important to record once you get to your site. And then I included the fish section again. I know some were thinking it could be useful, so we'll keep it in. And it certainly never hurts to make a fishing trip out at the same time. And again, we just have that probe calibration box. So as you're calibrating dissolved oxygen, it'll give you that barometer value. And then for connectivity, the calibration solution will be sent with the supplies and it will be clearly labeled, and that's where you can record that value. And we'll get into calibration pretty soon. Okay, so on the back side of the sheet, it's mostly the same as winter. We have our big boxes for our probe measurements. We're going to look at temperature, dissolved oxygen, and connectivity again. You're going to start at the 0.1 meter depth, which will be marked on your probe cord. Here's where you will record your bottom depth, which you're going to take with the tape and weight when you first get to site. We also still have our chlorophyll A filter volumes. So when we get into the chlorophyll steps, we'll go over that, but that's where you can record that filter volume per paper. One new addition is the color of the filter. So this is when you're filtering, and after you filter your first paper, you can take a look at the color. Does it appear brown, green, red, like, and that's where you're going to write that. And yeah, I left a big space again just to record any additional comments such as vegetation or wildlife observed while sampling, any additional weather conditions, or if you have any issues with sampling equipment. Yeah, just please include them there. Again, it just like gives a better idea of how the sampling day went, kind of what the environmental conditions were. Oops, sorry. Okay, and then to please include the names of the technicians or community members participating in the sampling trip. So before you head out, first thing is to freeze some ice packs. This will be for both the sampling trip and for shipping the samples back later. So it's, yeah, that's very important that you have some cold ice packs on hand. Be sure to bring a phone or GPS out with you to find coordinates. If you've already been to that site, just there is a spot in the manual that you can write the coordinates down and you can review to go back out. Make sure your probe battery is fully charged. Make sure to bring a small cooler with you, and you'll put your bottle set and the cold ice pack in there, and to check that the wind and the weather are okay to sample in. And I'll remind you later, but wind is a very big factor with sampling in the summer. And just some GPS tips. So in the picture here, that's kind of the spot that you can write your GPS coordinates for your first sampling trip out. If you intend to go back to that site on the lake all through the summer, then you can just refer back to that. And then there is different ways that you can record GPS. So I just gave some examples here, and those will also be on the field sheet as well. So however the format is on your GPS or your phone, just record as is, and just be sure to record to as many digits as possible. And then we can always convert those formats later on. Okay, so Quite a few of you have gone through the calibration process through the winter, so you're pretty familiar with calibrating dissolved oxygen and connectivity, but I'm just going to do a review. And for anyone who has not had the opportunity to do this yet, then this will be good information. So first thing, when calibrating dissolved oxygen, there's three components here. There's the gray sleeve, the guard, and then the probe itself. So you're going to remove the gray sleeve and the guard on the probe. The guard just twists off, and then you're going to gently dry the surface tip with a tissue, or some Kim wipes will be sent in the kit, but you can also just use clean paper towel. So just gently dab the tip, make sure the sponge inside the gray sleeve is moist, and then put the guard and the gray sleeve back on and let sit for 5 minutes in your kit. Okay, and then you're going to attach the cord to the handheld and turn it on. You should see 3 values on the main screen, one for temperature, one for connectivity, and DO. Also, the units pictured on here, those are the appropriate units to use. So just make sure temperatures in degrees, make sure, and yeah, make sure that especially the dissolved oxygen is in the milligrams per liter. That's important. Okay, next you're going to press the cal button on your handheld. You're going to choose ODO on the screen. Choose DO %. And then it's going to bring you to this screen, and you're just going to wait 1 minute while those 2 lines at the bottom stabilize. So you don't want to see any like sharp fluctuations. And then this is also where it states the barometer value. So that's where you can record that on your field sheet. Okay, and once those 2 lines are stable, you can hit accept calibration, and it should say calibration successful at the bottom of the screen. If there's any issues, don't accept a bad calibration. Go through the process again, or you can give me a call and we can troubleshoot together. And then you'll just press escape, and then that's DO. And then for the connectivity calibration, you just keep the cord attached to the handheld. You're going to record the calibration solution. So just on the bottom right there, you can see the bottle. It says 987 microsiemens per centimeter. So that's the value that you would record on the field sheet. You're going to fill up the graduated cylinder and then put the probe inside. And what you want is for that piece that needs to be completely submerged. And then you're going to let that sit for 5 minutes. And then once again, press the cal button. This time choose connectivity. Choose the specific conductance button. Okay, and the important thing to note for connectivity is you do have to change the calibration values so that it's the same value that's written on the bottle. And you're just going to put that there and then wait 1 minute again for the lines to stabilize. And then you can accept the calibration and put the gray sleeve back on, and then your probe is ready for sampling. So obviously a big difference between winter and summer sampling is that you can't just walk out to your site. We'll have to take a boat out. I believe we have spoken with most communities earlier in the year regarding access to boats. However, if there's any concern about having access to a boat for both of your lakes, please email me and we can figure out a plan. So when packing up your boat, please make sure to bring the probe kit, a small cooler with your bottle set, and cold ice pack. This is very important for for summer, because again, we don't want the samples getting warm while you're out. So make sure your boat has enough gas and oil to go out on the lake for about an hour or 2, or in the case of canoes, that the paddles are in good shape. Having an emergency paddle on a motorized boat is always highly recommended, obviously in case something does go wrong and you do need to make it back to shore. Bringing a life jacket or PFD onto your vessel is required by law. It is your choice to wear it while on the boat, but one just has to be accessible for each person on the boat. A very important item that is needed is an anchor or sufficient weight, depending on the size of your vessel, along with an attached rope that is of appropriate length for the lake you're sampling on. So a rule of thumb we have typically is that the rope should be twice as long as the max depth of your lake. I know in many cases we're unaware of the depth of the lakes being sampled because they've never been sampled before, but likely having a 20 to 30 meter rope will be more than enough. If you know the lakes you're on are quite shallow, like maybe only a 10 meter length would be needed. Either way, this is really important to have once you reach your sampling site. This will help prevent your vessel from drifting while you're taking the profile measurements, and to collect all your bottles because you will be there for an extended period. Some other important notes, make sure bring a cell phone or a radio, especially if service is not great in that area. It's good to have a cell phone to look at your weather app to fill out your field sheet for the wind direction and temperature and speed. Also to grab your GPS coordinates if you are using an app. Other safety gear to consider would be a buoyant rope for rescue purposes, bringing a GPS, and this is nice because you can use this out of service, and also a whistle or air horn to signal an emergency. A few other things that I didn't list here would just be like a small first aid kit, a boat repair kit, and a flashlight. These are all optional, but just important things to consider. So once your boat is equipped and launched, you're going to head out to where you want to sample. Once you arrive, drop your anchor and secure it. And then you're going to grab your GPS coordinates and record them on the field sheet. And I just kind of put a little picture there about strong winds. This is really important to know because this is first and foremost a safety concern. You don't want to be sampling in high winds out on the lake. But this also is a sample integrity concern because the probe will drift heavily while being lowered down, and the data reading on the handheld will not accurately reflect the depths. So depending on the size of your lake, the wind speed will be important. I think for us, we've had a general rule of thumb. If it's getting around like 20 to 25 kilometers an hour, we won't go out and sample, but again, that will depend on the size of your lake. Smaller, skinnier, more sheltered lakes, you could go out if it's past 20 kilometers, but on large open lakes, even I've been out when it's been 17 to 18 kilometers an hour, and it just makes sampling a lot harder. The probe drifts, it's just a lot more frustrating. So just something to keep in mind when planning your trip out. Okay, so next you're going to record your measurements. So all the sampling information on the field sheet, all the environmental observations, and then you're going to take the tape and weight that's going to come with your kit, and you're going to record your bottom depth, and you can fill that out on the back side of the field sheet. This is also an opportunity to fill out any additional comments you have, like vegetation types, weather, wildlife, how busy the lake is, if you've had any difficulty launching your vessel. Okay, so yeah, this is a big difference between winter and summer is the addition of the Secchi disc. So in summer, we measure the Secchi depth, which relates to the water clarity or transparency. I'll just go over the steps to measure Secchi. First and foremost, it's very important to measure Secchi depth on the shady side of the boat and to remove your sunglasses when you do this. This will minimize the reflection off the water. So wherever the sun is in the sky, just head to the opposite side on your boat. Sometimes the sun may be directly above you and there really isn't a shady side. So just do your best to choose what side you think will interfere the least when measuring. Next, you're going to lower the Secchi disc until just under the water surface. Take a minute to record the color of the Secchi disc on your field sheet. So as you can see at the bottom there, it says color of Secchi disc. That will be on your field sheet. So what you'll do is you'll look at the white stripes on the disc and mark what color the water appears against it. So it could be colorless, it could be brown, it could be green. If it's other, like, please just record the color you see. And now you're going to continue slowly lowering the disc until the white stripes just disappear from view. This marking guide I have up here, this will be included in the manual. Just make sure to become familiar with it, just so you can keep track of where you're at as you're lowering it. So once the disc just disappears, like you barely can't see the white stripes anymore, hold it there, record that depth on the field sheet. And then the next step is to slowly raise it up. And then once you can just see the white stripes again, it's going to be very faint. You're going to record that measurement, and the chain is marked in meters already too, so you don't have to convert to anything. And then you can pull the Secchi disc all the way back up, and you're just going to calculate the average of those two depths and then record that as your Secchi. So for example, if your Secchi depth disappeared at 2.7 meters and then became visible again at 2.1 meters, then the average would be 2.4 meters, and that would be your Secchi depth. And the chain that everyone will be receiving will be around 15 meters total. It's very unlikely that the Secchi will surpass 15 meters. I think we just looked at the highest Secchi in the province to date is maybe like 13 and a half meters. So if it does happen, however, just please let me know, and we can provide a longer chain. So last year, the Pigeon Lake Watershed Association began a Secchi program for volunteers to go out and collect Secchi measurements on the lake. They made a quick training video for how to measure the Secchi depth, and I'm just going to see if I can play that right now, just to give you an idea of what it would look like.
I'll let you know, Kirsten, when it appears on the screen here.
Okay.
Science coordinator from the Pigeon Lake Watershed Association, and I'm here today to teach you.
Yeah, and if you can turn your volume, up slightly, that'd be great.
Okay.
Oh, it's full. Yeah.
Is it really quiet?
It's quiet, but you know, if you make it full screen, I think it does have closed captioning on too.
Yes, it does. Okay.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Helsa Chetley, Community Science Coordinator from the Pigeon Lake Watershed Association, and I'm here today to teach you how to take a Secchi depth, measure water clarity as an indicator of lake health. Whenever you are out on your boat, please remember to follow the appropriate safety protocols, including checking weather conditions prior to leaving the dock, and always wearing your life jacket. First, take your boat at least a few kilometers from the shoreline. The deeper the water, the better, and then anchor your boat to keep it stable. Always dip in on the shadier side of the boat. When you are ready, slowly lower your disc into the water. Try to keep it vertical as it goes into the water, even if conditions are windy or wavy. Our Secchi discs have black marks along the cord every 10 centimeters and orange marks every 1 meter, which are used to measure the Secchi depth. Lower the disc until you can no longer see it. This will be your first measurement. Slowly raise the disc until you are just able to see it again. This will be your second measurement. Take the average of these two measurements, and then you have your Secchi depth. Thank you to Alms and our volunteer Darren for helping us make this video and teaching you guys how to take a Secchi depth.
Everyone can see this again?
That looks good again.
Okay, great. Well, Yeah, Pigeon Lake was one of my lakes last year, and as you can see, I'm not going to become an actress anytime soon. So, but they did a good job. It's a pretty straightforward, simple video, how to do Seki. And I will include this link on our website as well, so you guys can refer to it later on. Okay, so once you have your Seki, you're going to start your profile measurements. So, just like the Seki disc, all of the probe cords will be marked as well, and this marking guide will be included in the manual. I also wanted to note on that Pigeon Lake video, they have different markings, so just follow the marking guide that we provide for you. And the probe cable is marked in meters, not feet, so just please record all profile measurements and your bottom depth in meters, just to make it easier. And the last step will be collecting all of your bottles. So the steps for these are pretty much the same as winter. I won't spend too much time on this, but just a few key points is to label your bottles before you start dipping them into the lake. It's a lot more difficult to write on the labels with a Sharpie once the bottles are wet. Please fill in the labels on the bottle with the lake name, location, date, and time. For the start time, all the bottles can be the same. You don't have to do like 1 minute increments. You can just keep it all the same. It'll just make it easier. And once again, there won't be the green gloves to wear for the summer. That was just to keep your hands warm in the winter. But an important note is to please triple rinse all your bottles in the lake before filling them up. And then there are 2 bottles to pay attention to. That would be the microcystin bottle. And for that, to just leave a little bit of headspace so that it doesn't burst when it gets put in the freezer. And then also the G2 preserved bottle. And this one will require you to add the preservative into it. So once you add it in, just invert the bottle a couple times. And all these bottles will remain in the cooler with a cold ice pack while on the boat until you get back. And I'll go over proper bottle storage right away. And also, like, all these bottles will be labeled as well, so there you won't have to question which bottle's which. So these are the sampling steps while on the lake. Are there any questions about that or anything that we've discussed so far? Okay, and if any point in time, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. Okay, so after sampling, you'll get back to your home or office. I've made a chart on how to properly store the bottles. This will be in the manual. So with the routine G1 TSS, G2 preserved, G2F, and isotope bottles, these have a 3-day hold time from collection time. So these bottles must be stored cold in a fridge, not frozen, so don't throw them in your freezer. The microcystin bottle has a longer hold time of 3 months once it's stored frozen. So when returning from the trip, make sure to put this in the freezer right away until you're ready to ship out everything. And once again, just leave a little bit of headroom in the bottle so that it won't burst. With the chlorophyll A, you can store that bottle in the fridge to keep it cold until you are ready to filter. Once you have filtered, you can store those 3 filter papers that'll be wrapped in aluminum foil, put them in a Ziploc bag, and then put them in your freezer until ready to ship. A very important note is that the chlorophyll has to be filtered within 24 hours once collected. So as most of the bottles do have a shorter hold time of 3 days, it's important to have all the bottles shipped out together the day of sampling or by the next day at the latest, because it still will take a day for the bottles to arrive at our office, and then we need to get them up to the labs. So the sooner the bottles are received, the sooner the labs can get them and have them analyzed. And I'm going to review the chlorophyll filtering steps right away here. Okay, so this is just to look at the pieces that are going to come in the kit. So you have a hand pump, the filter apparatus, a wash bottle, your graduated cylinder. And then you're going to have quite a few filter papers, especially with each community doing 2 lakes this year. You're going to receive quite a few filter papers. So the first step is to just unscrew that filter top. You're going to place the filter paper on the bottom of it, screw the top back on, and then you're ready to start filtering. So first step is to wet the filter paper with pure water provided in the kit. You're going to use that hand pump to gently pump down the water and filter it through the flask underneath. The difference between winter and summer sampling is the likelihood that you will have to filter less water in the summer to get some color, as a lot of lakes produce more algae and as the season passes, whereas in the winter, I think what a lot of communities noticed that it was more clear. So some lakes over the winter only required even 20 to 100 milliliters to be filtered per paper. So with that in mind, you're going to take your chlorophyll bottle and invert it a few times just to mix the water up. And I would start measuring at 50 milliliters this time instead of 100 milliliters. And then you're going to pour that in and filter it down with the pump. You're going to look for a slight green color change. If you don't notice any color change on the filter paper, measure out another 50 milliliters. You can always unscrew the top off if it's difficult to see a color change. And you're just going to continue filtering 50 milliliters at a time until you reach a maximum filter volume of 300 milliliters. And once again, you do not want to exceed the 300 milliliters per filter paper, as there's only 1 liter of water in that bottle. And you need to make sure that you get the 3 separate filter papers out of the sample. So once you have your sample filtered, just use your wash bottle and pure water to triple rinse your graduated cylinder and the inside of the filter apparatus. Pump that water down, and then you're going to add the 3 drops of magnesium carbonate to the filter paper. And then your sample is ready to go into the Petri dish. So just unscrew that top part again, use the tweezers to carefully lift the filter paper by the edge. Be wary of touching the chlorophyll sample in the middle and put that into the Petri dish. You're going to fold the paper in half twice and then tape it up. Please label the dish with the provided filter labels. That will include the lake name, location, the filter date, and volume filtered. And wrap the Petri dish up with the foil and put into a Ziploc bag. And then you're going to repeat all this twice more to get a total of 3 filter papers. So just make sure to always triple rinse the graduated cylinder and the inside of the filter apparatus between each filter paper. And yeah, just starting at 50 milliliters might be best. So then once we get an idea of what the lake will look like through the summer, then you can try different increments, but we just want a little bit of color on the paper. It doesn't need to be saturated. Is there any questions for filtering? Okay. So for the shipping logistics, on the right here, I've included a ICBM shipping slip, which is going to come in every kit this summer. I just thought it would make it easier to have all our information in one spot. Our Purelator account number will be included on there. So by all means, please use that number again when shipping samples and gear back to us. And you don't need to send this slip back with the samples, like just please hold on to it for the whole summer as a reference. So some key points, please plan to ship samples back the same day when sampling occurs or the day after at the latest. Be sure to check with your courier for overnight cutoff times. I know in La Clabiche, I think it's pretty tight. It's like noon that you have. Whereas in Fort Mac, I think it's like 5 or 6. So just make sure to look that up beforehand. Please send a copy of the field sheet with the samples, or you can email a copy to me. the day of or the next day. But if you do send a physical copy with the field sheet, just put it in a Ziploc bag so that it doesn't get wet. And just really important to send the samples back with an ice pack or two, whatever will fit in the cooler, but make sure they're cold, because again, with summer, we want to make sure that our samples arrive cold. And just to please email or text me a picture of the tracking number. Summer is usually better for deliveries, but things still do come up, so that just makes it easier that we can pay attention to where the samples are and if there's been any delays. So just a few considerations for summer. Consider sampling from Sunday to Wednesday, just to ensure that samples are not being shipped on the weekends and then they won't exceed those hold times. If Thursdays are the only day that will work for the month, that's okay. Just please plan to sample in the morning and then plan to ship out the samples by the afternoon so that we can still receive them by Friday. We recommend leaving at least 2 weeks in between sampling trips, as this will show more variability in the lake and give us a better idea of how it changes as the summer progresses, and allows for other factors to be presented as well. So once again, we're going to aim for once a month sampling starting in June and ending in September. Of course, weather dependent, but this will give you 4 sampling trips. However, if the weather is not cooperating or your schedule is filling up pretty quick, just leaving that 2 weeks in between at a minimum would be sufficient enough. And just weather can just be a much bigger hindrance in the summer. You know, we have thunderstorms and heavy rain and high heat and winds, and of course a lot of wildfires. So please always check the weather radars ahead of time. If the conditions are bad or questionable, don't go out. The trip can always be rescheduled, and maybe just keep a backup date in mind. Oftentimes with our own programs, we'll schedule a trip and the weather may look okay beforehand, and then we'll wake up and it's completely changed. So that call can be made the day of. Just please let me know if the plans do change, and then we won't expect a sample arrival the next day. Obviously, your safety is the most important thing. And I just wanted to make a note of some office closure dates, just due to all the long weekends we have. So these will be listed in your manual as well, but just some dates to keep in mind. I believe all of these are Mondays, so sampling on the Monday itself would be fine. And then we can still receive the samples Tuesday or Wednesday, but just be mindful to not sample on the Sunday unless you plan to ship out on the Monday instead. That would work. And then just in terms of site selection, so picking or prioritizing 2 lakes that are accessible to launch a boat or canoe at. As long as there's a road or path, if you're able to ATV in with a canoe or anything, that can work, but just keeping in mind when picking your lakes that you want to be able to access them easily enough. Just to reduce your frustration, of course, but also with the boat, the boat just has to be large enough to fit the probe kit, the sampling gear, and the bottle sets. We've sampled in a canoe before, so if that's your preferred option for that lake, it can definitely work. Just keep in mind all the gear that you have to bring. Okay, so just some next steps. Just consider which 2 lakes your community would like to sample, and just to please let me know ASAP. The sooner you let me know the lakes, the sooner I can get the paperwork ready for them, and then we can get the gear shipped out and start sampling. Let me know if there's any additional gear that you'll need for sampling. You know, if you need anchor, any boat safety gear. There is a list for the summer safety gear up on the ICBM webpage right now you can refer to, and just let me know if you need us to provide any of that. Also, if you haven't had a chance yet, to please complete the oil sands monitoring ICBM winter lake survey that was sent out about a month ago. For any of the environmental monitors that went out or any community members that went out, this is just a really helpful tool to see how season of the program went, if there's any recommendations going forward. If you can't find the link for that, just let me know. I can resend it to you. And then we're gonna be making a shipping plan with each community soon to send out the gear and bottles and everything again. So yeah, first, most importantly, let me know which lakes you're hoping to sample. And then we can proceed from there. Okay, so that is the end of the information session. Thank you again to the Oil Sands Monitoring Program and to the staff for their support, as well as a giant thank you to every community that sampled through the winter. I felt that it went quite well, but that being said, are there any questions or concerns right now?
There's nothing in the chat, but if folks want to, if folks want to unmute, you can just ask a question.
Hi, Kirsten. This is Diane.
Hi, Diane.
I know we're talking about the 2 lakes. So are we going to alternate the lakes? Or are we going to do 2 lakes every month?
2 lakes every month. Yeah, so
Okay.
so you'll receive all the bottle sets for that, more field sheets, more filter papers to accommodate that. So yeah, just consult with your community and let me know which 2 lakes you'd like to do. And the sooner everyone lets me know that, the sooner we can get gear sent out and we can start sampling.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten.
No problem. Also, you don't have to do 2 lakes as well, but you can prioritize maximum 2 lakes this summer. Any other questions? Okay, well, I think we are ready to wrap things up. So I'm going to let everyone get back to their afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this presentation was helpful. And I'm looking forward to starting sampling and coming to see everyone again this summer. Looking forward to meeting all the new faces joining us this summer. My contact information is below, so if you think of anything later on, don't hesitate to contact me. And yeah, be ready to get all the paperwork ready and we can start sampling. So I hope you all have a great rest of your week and we will talk soon. Merci, Cho.
Thanks, Kirsten. If you want to stop the recording now too, you can stop the recording.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirsten.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join today, Cam.
And Kirsten,